Observe the physical scale of this machinery. Industrial environments like this operate with a single objective: to optimize mechanical output. The architecture, the power, and the layout all serve the hardware. For a long time, the humans operating these iron giants were treated as disposable components. Placing a biological organism inside an environment engineered exclusively for metal and steam causes the human body to quickly break down. Before widespread regulation, the working class faced constant physical exhaustion, high injury rates, and aggressive respiratory diseases born straight from the factory floor. Plant managers followed strict, meticulous maintenance manuals to keep their boilers and engines running smoothly. Yet the vulnerable biology of the workers operating those engines lacked equivalent operational protections. This split screen outlines a specific focus. On the left, the manual for the machine. On the right, the focus of India's Factory Act of 1948. Chapter 3 of this legislation serves as a legally binding human maintenance manual, specifically drafted to provide a biological shield for the workforce. These clauses function as a mandatory engineering standard for the human body, ensuring that basic biology and dignity survive the high-pressure environment of mass production. On a floor like this, the microscopic pollutants in the air pose a risk to the worker's health as significant as the heavy machinery itself. The dense mechanical thread bobbins churn out constant friction, creating a particulate-heavy atmosphere that challenges the respiratory system. To counter this, Section 13 mandates adequate ventilation through the circulation of fresh air. If a manufacturing process generates excessively high temperatures, the law requires managers to separate or insulate the hot machinery, maintaining a reasonable, survivable room temperature. This diagram shows how Section 14 handles visible impurities. When a machine gives off dust or fumes, the factory must install active exhaust appliances right at the point of origin. The system intercepts the dust before it can reach the worker's respiratory zone. In industries like cotton weaving, managers artificially increase the humidity of the air to keep threads from snapping. Section 15 regulates this by requiring the water used for humidification to be drawn from a public drinking supply or effectively purified, preventing aerosolized pathogens from being sprayed directly into the lungs. Together, these three rules, managing heat, extracting dust, and purifying moisture, legally obligate the factory to mimic a healthy natural atmosphere. The human body is no longer forced to adapt to toxic industrial output. Look closely at how closely these workers are positioned while operating heavy pressing machines. When humans are crowded together on a high-speed factory floor, the risk of a physical accident increases, and airborne diseases spread more rapidly between individuals. Section 16 solves spatial constraints with strict geometry. Factories must guarantee 14.2 cubic meters of space per worker. To prevent bypassing the math with high ceilings, calculable space stops at 4.2 meters high. Vertical volume above that is ignored. Once the physical space accrued, Section 17 mandates sufficient lighting. The law specifically demands the prevention of harsh glare reflecting off smooth surfaces and the elimination of deep shadows that cause eye strain or make a worker misjudge the position of a moving machine part. By legally enforcing these specific spatial volumes and lighting geometries, the workspace is systematically mapped out. It moves from a state of chaos into a navigable, predictable environment. Thousands of people working in an enclosed space create a massive incubator for bacterial and viral pathogens. Preventing outbreaks requires aggressive, systemic sanitation controls. This floor plan illustrates Section 18's rules on hydration. Facilities must provide wholesome drinking water, but they cannot place those stations near sources of contamination. There is a mandatory 6-meter exclusion radius keeping drinking fountains separated from open drains, urinals, and latrines. For larger operations employing over 250 workers, the requirements scale up. Management is legally required to provide mechanically cooled drinking water during hot weather, protecting the workforce against heat exhaustion. Section 19 targets waste management. It dictates separate, lit, and ventilated latrines for men and women. These blocks must be maintained by dedicated sweepers and thoroughly scrubbed at least once every 7 days using chemical disinfectants. Section 20 addresses the physical environment by mandating designated spittoons. Spitting anywhere else on the premises carries a specific 5 rupee fine, a legal countermeasure designed to stop the spread of airborne disease droplets on the floor. Finally, Sections 11 and 12 lock in the physical maintenance of the building itself. Dirt must be swept daily, floors washed weekly, and effluents treated safely. Even the walls are legally required to be periodically repainted or varnished to suppress structural decay. When you combine the daily sweeping, the isolated drinking water, and the strict waste controls, these clauses act as a defensive system for the worker. They protect the human body from the byproducts generated by mass manufacturing. Look at this crowd of workers moving between the factory buildings. The Act applies specific requirements for air, water, and space across the entire industrial site, organizing the facility into a regulated, survivable ecosystem for thousands of people. To ensure compliance, the state arms chief inspectors with real authority. If a factory falls out of line, an inspector can serve the occupier with legally binding written orders, forcing them to implement specific health measures before a hard deadline. Here, a worker inspects heavy artillery shells. This highlights a crucial feature of the law: universality. Whether a factory produces woven cotton, processed chemicals, or munitions, the biological standards required for the workers remain absolute. Chapter 3 establishes an enduring legal doctrine. It states that economic output and industrial efficiency can never supersede baseline human health. By enforcing precise standards for air, water, and space, the Factory Act of 1948 makes human health a legal prerequisite for industrial operation. It ensures that biological necessity and human dignity remain permanent requirements within the manufacturing process.